All right, we should be live on YouTube and on TikTok, so let's just finish setting everything up and we should be good to go. Almost. All right, I think we are all set. Welcome, welcome everybody. Hope everybody's having a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you may be. Why? Why is this happening? I don't know why my Brave browser is being so finicky. Why? Why is this? Okay, I don't know why this is happening, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. All right, I just need to make sure that we're connected everywhere. Okay, I think we are all set. Connected 2 of 2. Okay, good, great. How am I doing? I'm doing okay. I had a meeting this morning already, so we're doing all right. Is there anything is there anything without our universe we know for a fact has no cause, within our universe that we know for a fact has no cause? Oh, you can't. Okay. Well, no, it really depends on your interpretation of quantum mechanics. There are some interpretations where there just are causeless things, but I don't take those interpretations as true. What do rockets push off of? They push off of the fuel that they eject, or the exhaust that they eject. That's what a rocket does. Are there ultimate limits to measurability, or can we probe arbitrarily deep with future experiments? Perhaps there is an ultimate limit to measurability, namely, once you get to high enough energies that you start producing black holes, you might run into trouble. Welcome, welcome. Make sure that if you're just joining us, you're liking the live, you're sharing the live, you're subscribing if you're on YouTube, you're following if you're on TikTok, gets this sent out to more people so we could have more questions. Does gravity bend time? Yes, yes it does. Well, bend space-time, and that's part of time is part of that. Can you explain gravistars? I think I have a video on this, but there's so many named things that I can never keep track of which one's which. So gravistars, are these the semi-classical ones? Gravistars are, oh no, these are the ones with the de Sitter in the inside. These are not the semi-classical ones. So yeah, so essentially what's the deal with gravistars is that they have some sort of gravitational false vacuum in the interior that pushes out. And so rather than collapsing down to a singularity, you just have a very thin shell of matter that's the size of the black hole. That's the idea of a gravistar. Do you think you can outsmart God the Creator? Well, I don't think that God's real. So what open question would move the needle most in physics? So I don't know what you mean by move the needle, but quantum gravity is probably one of the biggest questions that we have right now. Like, what is quantum gravity? How can you explain UFO from Pentagon? I have not even heard of that. Do you think Planet 9 exists? I kind of doubt it. Decoherence or consciousness causes collapse? Decoherence is like the widely accepted view amongst physicists. Can a theory without background spacetime, background independence, fully describe physics? Perhaps, yeah. How long did you study? I did 4 years of undergrad, 2 years for a master's, and 5 years for a PhD. Can you explain the mechanism that of big crunches? All a big crunches is that it's a recollapse. So if you have a sufficient amount of matter, gravity dictates that it will collapse to form, it'll get smaller and smaller and smaller, just like a black hole does. It's just a question of whether or not the gravitational attraction of the matter is stronger than the gravitational repulsion of, say, dark energy. Do you believe in hidden variables or many worlds? I'm a many worlds kind of guy. Do you believe in the existence of white holes? Nope, they almost certainly don't exist. If they did exist, we'd be able to see them because they'd be super bright. And also, there's no theoretical mechanism that we know of that could form them. Did we land on the moon? Of course we did. Will we ever achieve near light speed travel? That I don't know. So no ultimate grounding. What does that have to do with anything? Do you play any instruments? No, I haven't in a very long time. Are you ready for AGI? I don't know when AGI will happen, if it'll ever happen. Opinions on the Expanse series. I haven't seen it. Do you like the Big Bang Theory show? Generally, I think it's okay. I thought that it was funnier at the beginning than at the end, but Do you believe in string theory? I don't. Who would win in a fight, Einstein or Sean Carroll? Sean Carroll's alive, so probably Sean Carroll. That's my guess. How can something originate and come from something if at some point there had to be nothing? I don't know why you think that there is ever nothing. We figured out how to travel faster than light in a way nothing can travel the speed of light. What? Opinions on extraterrestrials? I'm sure that they exist somewhere in the universe. Well, I'm not sure, but I'm confident that they exist somewhere in the universe. I doubt they've ever been here. How was string theory debunked? It wasn't. What do you think about black hole flicker, AGN variability from public light? I haven't read it. The bubble moves faster than light, then the object inside is stationary. Oh, you're talking about Alcubierre drives. So nothing is actually ever moving faster than light. You're never in a reference frame where you're moving faster than light. However, what can happen is that space can stretch and shrink at arbitrary rates. Can gravity fold time? It can make it bend so much that it curves back in on itself. That's a thing that can happen. It requires some very exotic matter, but that's a thing that's at least in principle possible. But again, it requires certain kinds of matter that probably don't exist. Do you have a book recommendation for starting to understand the math use in quantum physics? Pick up a book on linear algebra, like a textbook. If light is the fastest thing in the universe, how is the expansion of the universe faster? The expansion of the universe is not a thing moving. It's a rate. It's like a doubling time. There's nothing moving faster than light. Do you think that time travel backwards is possible? I suspect not. Except perhaps by taking the long way around. Kind of like Futurama. Is it true that to travel the speed of light, the object must have no mass? Yes, that is true. What we call space-time is simply quantum error correcting code that keeps those two books balanced. Okay. That's fine, if you think that. Do infinities exist in reality or just in math? The only infinities that we have reason to think can't exist in reality are those infinities that would result, or that would be measurable, right? So if your theory requires that there is an infinity that you could like measure on a detector, like the dial would go to infinity, that probably can't, I would bet that cannot exist. But there can be infinities that wouldn't give you infinite readings. For example, you could have an infinitely large universe. There's no measurement that would read the volume of the universe. In that case, I don't think that there's an issue there. From John Jackson with the $10, thank you. Can you point to me to where I can go to understand the virtual particles popping in and out of empty space? No, because that's not a real thing that happens. It's made up, a fiction, farce, fake story. No, so the whole story about virtual particles aren't real. They're mathematical fictions. They're not even in principle measurable. Any calculation that apparently relies on them existing can be done in a way that doesn't rely on them existing. They are not a thing at all. Virtual particles are a mathematical tool, so they're not things. And John Jackson, again with the $10, sending the same question. So I just answered that question. How do you send super chats? You have to be on YouTube. But thank you again for the $10, John Jackson. The Casimir effect can be explained without virtual particles. You don't need them. You don't need virtual particles to explain the Casimir effect. You can explain the Casimir effect via a relativistic van der Waals force. Doesn't require virtual particles at all. And when you first learn about what virtual particles are, you learn that they are like a math trick. They don't show up in the original quantum field theory. They only show up when you start doing Feynman stuff. W Blitz, you hydrating? I'm not, but thank you for the $10 Fierce Interaction. Your phone glitched? All right, John Jackson, you get one free question. Right. Is infinity determined by our capabilities? I don't know what you mean by that. There are either infinite things in the universe or there aren't. Can you explain what CERN is doing? Yeah, they're basically smashing protons together and seeing what pops out. What is quantum entanglement? Why do people think it proves God? Well, I don't know why people think it proves God, but quantum entanglement is basically the idea that you can have one quantum system that looks like two particles. So if you do something to that quantum system, it'll happen to both. Or if you do something to part of that quantum system, it'll happen to the whole quantum system. even if it appears like it's two particles separated by space, and so you might have something that appears like it happens elsewhere instantaneously. From Lift Labs with the $5, when you have to pee on a car ride, why is it so much worse when you get close to home? Who knows? That's psychology, not physics. Isn't the wave function just a mathematical tool also? Yeah, I'm not necessarily a wave function realist in the sense that I'm not sure if mathematical objects exist. I think that the wave function might describe something real because it seems to be an indispensable way of describing something. So generally, a fairly common view amongst physicists is that if there is a mathematical tool that is indispensable to describe something, or if there is a mathematical concept that is indispensable to describe some physical observation, then it's likely that that mathematical concept attaches itself to something real. However, if you can have multiple different ways of describing the same thing, which none of which require the same mathematical concepts, then it's not clear at all that any one of those mathematical concepts points at something real. Just one question for me today. What book should I read if I want to be a physicist with ambitions of world domination? Death by Black Hole by Neil deGrasse Tyson, maybe. Does light bend, or does it just appear to bend because of acceleration? Yeah, light can bend, yep. Seriously, what's my favorite cheese? I like Swiss a lot, but I'm a cheese pluralist. I'm a cheese pluralist. Why is there something rather than nothing? Good question. Maybe there can't be nothing. What do you mean by real? Real as in materialistic nature? I mean real as in that there's like an object there, that there's something with ontology. Off topic, but will ice cubes see Betelgeuse go supernova before we see the photons? Maybe, if it's still around, right? From Pensive with the $5, hi, ya Blitz. Moved to YouTube to give you some money. I appreciate that. But yesterday you were talking about your paper. So how does your universe model deal with entropy? Entropy reverses in the model. It actually, like, you can do an entanglement entropy calculation that, namely that the entanglement entropy is proportional to the area of the universe. And what you'll find is that the entropy reverses because the universe gets smaller. Do you think the universe always existed or that it was just created out of nowhere? I don't think that there was ever nothing, if that's what you mean. Dang it, why does everybody like Swiss? Because it's delicious and it has holes in it. Did you specialize in any specific study? Yeah, so I do differential geometry and general relativity. Can we replicate the low gravity on the moon here on Earth? No. I mean, I guess if you like attached wires, but no, not really. What's your favorite high energy physics data set in Kaggle for I'm not a high energy physicist. I don't do particle physics. In video game dev, we use wave function collapse to do procedural stuff. Is this just a use of the same name as the science version of wave function collapse? Yeah, probably. How do you know math and physics are separate domains? Oh, I didn't claim to, well, I mean, okay, so sort of by definition they are. Mathematics is not an empirical science. As a field of study, it's just not empirical, right? It doesn't rely on empirical data. It can be done entirely in a closed off room with a blackboard. So they are definitely different fields of study. If you're asking how do I know that like physics isn't studying some underlying mathematical structure, well, maybe that is the case. But I think that Platonism is a little bit silly sometimes. Where is the photon when time stops? Time never stops. Photons move through time, no problem. If a particle would hypothetically reach superluminal, would it go backward in time? From some observers' perspectives, yeah. Did you just commit to mereological realism by claiming cheese has holes? Yes, I did, absolutely. What's your biggest cosmology wonder for you? I want to know what the deal is with the end of the universe and the beginning of the universe, if there was one. From Denzel Perez with the $5, if the laws of physics are universal, what does that imply about the likelihood of life elsewhere in the universe? Could aliens resemble what we know? Possibly, but I have a feeling that the way that we are is more of a coincidence, and that like you could imagine that like aliens that you could never even like conceive of what their body plans are like could also be successful. Does light have mass if gravity can bend it? No, light does not have mass despite being able to be affected by gravity. And that's solely because gravity is merely the curvature of space-time. and light will follow the curved paths. From Jed Bradshaw with the $5. In theory, can a civilization move slower through time relative to us if they have a dense enough planet? More time, more possible progress. So no, not really. Essentially what you would need is you would need for them to experience time more quickly than us. So you would want them to move faster through time, or yeah, slower through time, I guess would be the right way to think about it. But you would want for every one of our years to be like 10 years for them. The thing is so this is, I suppose in principle possible. So anytime that you're near a gravitational body, your clock slows down relative to somebody who's not near a gravitational body. So if you wanted to do this, the thing that you would do is you would go as far away from anything with mass as you possibly could, and then your clock would tick ever so slightly slow, or ever so slightly faster. But it would be like millionths of a second, right? Opinion about Przybylski star. I made a video about it a while ago, actually, and I spent a long time practicing how to pronounce it. Przybylski star is how you say it, by the way, and there's so many letters in there. How far do you believe AI and transhumanism will go? I don't know. It's not my field. Fast talking is good for view. This is just how fast I talk when I answer questions. If we were an underwater species, could we deduce the shape of our planet without surfacing? Do we still see shadows? Because in principle, if we still see shadows, we could. Also, yeah, we probably could just by doing triangulation, or just by kind of doing like distance surveys, by like measuring distances to various places. And, you know, I mean, in fact, there might even be a straight line that you can go around, like a straight line that you can take without turning that will end you up back where you started if you stay in the oceans. Thank you for answering the question. I'll ask the photon question again tomorrow. Can I jump forward or backward in the block universe? Well, no, you exist already in the block universe in a determined way, in some sense, at least if you take determinism seriously. If Newton would have been kicked in the head, then we wouldn't have gravity. Well, we wouldn't have a theory of gravity, at least not Newton's one. Tell me really fast how one entangled particle affects each other at great distances. Well, because they're the same quantum system. They're just not separate. Even if the question is boring and repeated, if someone who asked it paid some money, he would answer it, and he would even skip the very interesting questions if it was asked without giving money. Well, that's not really true. But if people do have a question and they're willing to like donate to get the question answered, of course I'm going to answer. Of course I'm going to answer it. Why wouldn't I? Do you think a Dyson sphere swarm is possible, and if so, how long do you think it's going to take if we started right now? A Dyson swarm, I mean, it's in principle possible, but it requires just a lot of matter. The question is how dense is it, right? A Dyson sphere is probably not possible. There's probably not enough matter in the solar system. But a swarm, sure, it's just a bunch of satellites. Question is how worth it is it? Question on your video: how can magnetic fields have a mass if they expand at the speed of light? Magnetic fields don't necessarily expand. You can have static magnetic fields, no problem. But the point is there's a mass equivalent of the magnetic field. The magnetic field causes gravitation in roughly the same way as something of that mass would be. Can I master physics just from books? I mean, in principle, yeah, but it's tricky. Hey, so can you tell me how to build real understanding in physics and math? Going to office hours, talking with professors, and getting a formal education, it will help. What does same quantum system mean? Well, look, so a quantum system is described by a vector in a Hilbert space. Now, the point is that a vector in Hilbert space is a single thing. Like, it's just a single thing. Now, sometimes you can separate that vector into several different, like basically multiplying a whole bunch of different vectors together, essentially. And then you can talk about those things as separate things because you can decompose them into several different vectors and several different Hilbert spaces. So like, you know, there's me, and I'm probably not quantum entangled with anything in the Andromeda galaxy. So my Hilbert, the vector corresponding to me plus the Andromeda thing can be separated into just the vector corresponding to me and just the vector corresponding to the thing in Andromeda. However, not all quantum systems are separable in that way, even if it looks like it's made of more than one particle. For entangled states, the vector that describes the quantum system, the entangled quantum system, is not separable. You can't break it up into two pieces. You can't talk about them as if they're independent things. So when you affect one, of course you're going to affect the other because it's not they're not two different things. They're two pieces of the same thing. This might be more chemistry-ish, but what do you think? Do you think we'll ever manage absolute zero? Well, I suspect not. There is a law of physics or a law of thermodynamics that says that we can't. In fact, you can show, at least classically, there might be an equivalent quantum, there might be a quantum equivalent of this, but you can show classically that for any process that would reduce your temperature, it will take an infinite number of steps to reduce your temperature from any finite temperature to zero. Any finite non-zero temperature, I should say. Do I need to understand functional analysis to understand quantum physics? To an extent, yeah, a little bit. You think renormalization in quantum field theory is a lie and essentially a mathematical mirage, or are we just fitting a statistical model to what we observe? Really, what about mu on G factor? So renormalization is, I mean, in some sense, it is using experimental data to fix your models so that your models can make better predictions about other experimental data. So I don't know what you mean by a mathematical mirage. Do I think that renormalization is some physical process? I doubt it. But it's a model that like the math works to give us the right answer, and it's not overfitting. It's definitely capturing something real. The question is what is it capturing? And then your question is what about the mu on G factor? What about it? Could you explain how we ourselves have a wavelength according to the de Broglie relation? Yeah, so the de Broglie relation is that any quantum system has a wavelength that's inversely proportional to its momentum, right? That's the statement, right? I can never remember. Is it inversely proportional? Is it proportional? Yeah, it's inversely proportional to the momentum. And so we are just a whole bunch of quantum stuff interacting together. So in principle, we're a quantum system. Now, practically speaking, we behave like a classical system, but the point is in principle, we're a quantum system. And so in principle, we have a de Broglie wavelength. It's just very, 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 very small. From warm milk with the $5, 5 New Zealand dollars. Oh, you again. If you scaled down the universe, what would it taste like? Probably nothing. It probably wouldn't taste like anything. What exactly is your job, professor or researcher? So I'm a science communicator and a researcher. I'm not a professor at a university, no. I've always had this question. If a higher dimensional object, no matter how small, entered a lower dimension, will the lower dimension collapse due to infinite information? It's not, I don't even know I don't know how to make sense of that question. I'm sorry. Opinion on Dr. Stone? I have no idea who that is. Is it true we never actually touch anything but rather what we feel is touch senses repulsion? Well, that's what we mean by touch. If like the wave function describing the electrons in our fingertips overlap with the wave function describing the electrons in the thing that you're touching. So if by touch you just mean that your bits overlap with their bits, then yeah, that definitely happens. If you mean by touch as in like the electron is like some solid ball and it touches some other solid ball, no, that doesn't happen. But that's because electrons are not like tiny little spheres, right? How long until AI is responsible for most of new physics discoveries? I don't know, but it's currently not happening. Effective magnetic field on a critical current in a Josephson junction. So I don't know a lot about Josephson junctions. I did read a bit about them for a video I made for a friend like a year or two ago. I did make a video on Josephson junctions. So maybe go watch that. The information might be there, but I don't think about that kind of condensed matter stuff very often. So yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Thank you for the $1, Christopher. I appreciate you. Is pilot wave dead? No, it's just not, supported by a majority. If everything is made of atoms, why can't you go through objects since there's space through them? Atoms are not empty. Atoms are filled with electrons, right? That's what fills the space of an atom. They're not empty. Big question, is energy conserved in our universe? Energy is not even well defined in our universe, at least not in the traditional sense. Now, you can define like quasi-local energies and things like this, but even then that's not defined, no, or that's not conserved. What does your day look like as a physicist? Well, the first half of my day, or the first third of my day, really depends on when I start. I spend time doing science communication because we all have to do some sort of outreach, some sort of teaching. So I'll make a video or I'll do a live stream or something like this to talk about some neat idea. And then the second half or second 2/3 is mostly meetings and then calculations, maybe sometimes trying to write a proof or writing up a paper. The flat earthers are running with your, can you prove that you have hands? Oh, good. They're actually doing epistemology? Wonderful. I'm glad to hear it. How does the LHC contain that amount of energy? There's actually not a lot of energy in the protons. So you can work it out. So what is it? So each proton is like 1 TeV or something like that. So let's say each proton is 1 TeV, and then how many protons in LHC bunch? So the point is there's just not a lot of energy there. So each proton will have like it will have like about 10 to the minus 7 joules, about 100 nanojoules worth of energy. And there's 115 billion protons. So what we end up with is like basically 1,000 joules or so of energy per proton bunch. Now, 1,000 joules might seem like a lot, but let's just figure out how many joules in a 1.5 volt battery. So in a 1.5 volt battery, 1.5 volt AA battery contains roughly 10,800 joules of energy. So this is to say, it's really not a lot of energy. It's just that energy is really, really concentrated into relatively few protons. So yeah. Blitz, you know Chinese? I don't. Why hasn't all the heat from the inner Earth dissipated by now? Well, one, the Earth is big. Two, the Earth's inner heat is sustained, at least in part, by radioactive decay. If string theory is fundamentally background dependent, how can you say it provides a complete theory of quantum gravity when general relativity is background independent? So some people, and I'm not sure I'm convinced by this, but some people think that once you take into account the string landscape, that it's not actually background independent, or it's not actually background dependent anymore. I'm not sure I'm convinced by that, but at least some serious people believe that. From warm milk with the 2 New Zealand dollars, baby powder made out of babies. Is it ethical? No, you should not be making baby powder out of babies. What's your favorite ice cream flavor? I'm a chocolate kind of guy. Many worlds seems like a universe of the gaps theory. Is it? No. So many worlds is basically saying what happens if you just believe quantum mechanics is true. You don't add anything else. You have the Schrödinger equation. You have vectors in a Hilbert space. What happens if that's all there is? Well, then you get many worlds. That is the answer. Now, if you add things like wave function collapse, many worlds disappears. If you add things like what is it? There's an equation that shows up in the Bohm interpretation. Then many worlds disappears. Like the actual particle that is guided by the guiding wave. Then the many worlds disappears. If you add things like dynamical collapse, then the wave function disappears. Or then the many worlds disappear. However, if you just take bare bones quantum mechanics, you get many worlds for free. How can an electron exhibit both wave-like and particle-like properties? Well, all of the particle-like properties are just wave-like properties, just in a very, very small region, a very, very small place. I recommend watching Dr. Stone, the most inspiring thing in the world. Okay, I don't know who that is. If 2 particles are in the same vector, how is the communication instantaneous? They're not 2 particles. It's just 2 pieces of the same quantum wave function. But to be clear, there's no instantaneous communication. And it's not even clear if wave function collapse happens. That's not something that's ever been measured. So it's hard to say if there's even anything instantaneous happening at all. How is there no center of the universe if it was a dense ball? How's everything expanding uniformly if I'm not expanding from you? So the observable universe was a very, very, very dense ball 13.8 billion years ago. And the observable universe does have a center. The observable universe is centered on you. But the universe as a whole, we don't really have a good reason to believe that it actually has a center. I see you actively registering my question, then skipping it. What's your question? There are a lot of questions. Don't think you're special. I have to scroll up so far to find it. Stop running from my question. Where did you ask this question? It was probably a flat Earth question, wasn't it? I'm gonna bet money it was a flat Earth question. Yeah, I can't find it. If you want to ask it again, maybe I'll see it. From warm milk with the 2 New Zealand dollars again, thank you. Has science proven that Peter Parker is Spider-Man? Yes, yes it has. Why isn't the relation between the intensity of energy and wavelength not linear in black bodies? Why would it be linear? I mean, the wavelength, the relationship between wavelength and energy, or any wave, is not linear. Typically, energy goes as the frequency squared. I'm 17 years old, currently advancing in the field of physics. Is it true that only a minority likes theoretical physics? A minority of physicists do theoretical physics, maybe about a third. How do you know that there isn't a center of the universe in the unobserved universe? There could be, but it'd be very, very weird if there were. How far away are we from positive fusion energy? That I don't know the answer to. That's it's an empirical question that, and it's not my field of research, so I can't really comment on it. This person asked their question again? No, I don't see it. What is the correlation between quantum physics and missing socks when I do laundry? There's a high correlation there. How can you have ultimate zero and then have a big bang, nothing comes from nothing? I don't think there was ever nothing. Is it true that there's no starting point from where galaxies expanded? Yeah, so the way that we understand the universe, there's no like center, but where are your papers? Didn't see anything besides TikTok gibberish. I keep my academic identity and my TikTok identity separate. What's your favorite physics myth or misconception that you love to debunk at parties? I don't go to parties a lot. Is it possible to choose which particle is quantum entangled in reference to the source quantum particle? In other words, can I choose which particle to entangle with a sort of. I mean, generally when we take, so entanglement happens whenever you have a strong enough interaction, but the way that we typically make in pairs of entangled particles is we just produce them together. If many worlds is correct, what determines the branching of the wave function? Can this ever be empirically distinguished from other interpretations of quantum mechanics? So the branching is a subjective thing. The many worlds interpretation is not like that there's literal branching that happens, that literally happens universally. Branching is subjective. It's a way of describing how your quantum system has decohered, and so you end up in a mixed state, unable to talk to each other. Are you a fan of the idea of primordial vacuum bubbles? I don't know if I'm a fan of it. It's weird how smart people talk really fast and stall for a long time before speaking again. Well, I have to find a question to read, right? Does this mean that you and I live in separate visible universes? What different things can potentially affect us? Yes, in principle. However, generally speaking, the observable universe that you and I share, I should say, the overlap of the observable universes that you and I have is basically the entire observable universe because the distance between us is pretty small. And it's very, very unlikely that there's like a part of a galaxy that's in your observable universe that's not in mine. Is Neil deGrasse Tyson really a phony? No, he's not. Can we infinitely divide particles in half? Not as far as we can tell, no. Bro, he won't answer that. Answer what? You know I have two screens that I have to look at, right? You're not special, Seth. And I can't even see your question. I'm scrolling up. I don't see your question, my guy. Maybe it's just not showing on TikTok because TikTok thinks that your question is stupid. There's a question about redshift that Ethan asked. Thoughts on redshift also explained by Newtonian mechanics via Doppler shift models? I don't like it, but it's correct. As long as, so the thing is it's fine so long as you recognize that dark energy is negative gravity. If you're fine with that, then you're good. JWST found galaxies much older than thought, close to the Big Bang. How does that change what we know? It changes how we think galaxies form. So prior to JWST launching, all we knew was how galaxies formed based off of the way that all we knew, why am I not signed in on, no wonder. Sorry, one sec. All we knew was how galaxies formed in the near universe, in the recent universe. We didn't know how they formed in the early universe. But now that we have JWST, now we're learning how it formed in the old universe, in the ancient universe. And so that's going to be different. It just is different. What is lighter, air or device to create fire? It depends, I guess. Depends on what the device is. What do you think the world is? Your best intelligent estimate? I think it's a universe. For some reason I can't. Okay. Why isn't the Earth a solid blue color when viewed from space, yet the sky is blue from the ground? So that's a good question. So the question is basically, why is it that when we look up, we only see the blue light from the sky, but when we look down, we see the ground from space? And the idea is, it's fairly straightforward, but it's a good question. So when you're looking up in the sky, in most places in the sky, you're not looking at anything. The sky is pretty bright, but not overwhelmingly bright. And so if there was a star behind the sky, oh, I may have missed the joke, yeah. If there was a star behind the sky's gonna be brighter than the star. The bright blue of the sky is gonna be brighter than the star. However, at least during the day, when the sun is shining light on the ground is way brighter than the blue sky is. So you see the blue sky, or say you see the ground with perhaps like a tiny, tiny bluish tint through the blue sky. Is there any other convincing model that currently competes with the standard model? With the standard model of particle physics? No, not really. Negative gravity as dark energy is a strong statement. No, dark energy being negative gravity. Yes, that is a strong statement. And it's not one that you should accept. I gifted, please answer. The super chats are on YouTube. I can't tell who gifted. Oh, but I can see it now. Thank you for the heart. Now, I don't know what your question is, though. Do you think consciousness is fundamental or emergent? I think it's emergent. Can matter falling into a black hole produce quark gluon plasma? I guess in principle, yeah. What's your IQ, and do you also think you're also emotionally intelligent? I don't know, and I don't know. If we could create gravitational waves, could we communicate across the universe like radio? In principle, yeah. But it'd be way more efficient to just do electromagnetic waves, because electromagnetic waves are easier to produce and easier to detect. What should I do to do good in AP Physics, NM, and EM, Newtonian Mechanics, and Electromagnetics this year? Study? I don't know. I don't know what would help you. Do we live in a deterministic universe? I think so, at least from a quantum deterministic universe, right? Why can't we know how the universe was created? There's nothing saying that we can't know that. Why isn't... Okay, sorry, my YouTube live chat stopped updating. And I don't know why. Sorry, I may have missed some. So the split isn't physically real. Doesn't that reduce many worlds to an epistemic story rather than a physical theory? It's not that it's not physically real, it's that it's subjective. It's that it depends on who's making the observation in the wave function, right? Odds that AI will eventually be able to develop novel concepts in physics? No idea. What happens if a blind man looks at the quantum thing? Well, look, if the interaction happens, then it happens and you get the wave function collapsed. If it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. It doesn't have anything to do with like a person, at least not as far as any of our, at least not as far as the mainstream view is. Why isn't there a good way to generate electricity? There is, solar panels, great way. What do you know about math? Well, I have a degree in math and published in mathematical journals, so I would say a fair amount. Why do particles behave differently when observed versus not? They don't. They behave differently when interacted with. And that's just because interaction changes the behavior of the thing that's being interacted with. What is undeniable proof for gravity? You can look up the EOT-WASH, it's EOT-WASH, Cavendish experiments. They're the most high precision Cavendish experiments that we have access to. You can also look up gravitational time dilation, but they probably won't like that either. From warm milk with the $2 New Zealand dollars again, I'm hungry. Is 4:46 a.m. a bad time to buy McDonald's? Probably. Local twisting magnetic fields, field line snapping. Can you give a Matthew your take on this? Yeah, so all I'm saying is that you can have magnetic disturbances. It was kind of intentionally vague. The point is that you can have, you can have changes in the magnetic field that happen rapidly and cause a dramatic change in the local electric and magnetic fields because they're changing. Essentially, you can have a magnetic field line crossing you can have a topological change in the magnetic field as a result of a crossing. And that can energize charged particles. So that's how you can end up with over or under densities in a gas cloud otherwise. Is having a degree in math required to have a career in physics? No, not at all. It definitely helps if you're a theorist, though. How come when we look at space through a telescope, we can see things clearly if the Earth is spinning? Because the Earth is spinning slowly, like very slowly. What happens to physics if you're outside our galaxy? Well, presumably it's the same. When we look at other galaxies, the physics looks like it's basically the same there as it is here, so, you know. Does the observer effect apply to a 100% blind person? The observer effect doesn't have anything to do with a person. It just has to do with the instruments and the interactions. Magnets do no work, but if you ask about how they work, now that's a different question. Magnets can do work. They just don't do work on charged particles. Right, so if branching depends on the observer, how can many worlds maintain an objective universal wave function rather than collapsing into a kind of relational? Right, so the wave function never changes. The collapsing is not a thing that happens to the wave function. The wave function is the wave function. The point is the observer finds themselves in a different branch depending on what their preferred basis is. Like basically, the observer has access to some part of the wave function. They exist in some part of the wave function, and depending on what their preferred basis is, they will get they will see the universe being in different branches, or rather, they would deduce that the universe is in different branches. From More Milk again with the $2 New Zealand, what is the gravitational pull of a Big Mac? You could compute that yourself. I don't actually know the mass of a Big Mac, but you know the gravitational constant's like 10 to the minus 11. A Big Mac's probably like half a kilogram. So, you know, you probably get like 10 to the minus 11 or so, on the order of 10 to the minus 11 newtons from 1 meter away. Sorry, 10 to the minus 11 meters per second squared from 1 meter away. That's probably roughly it. Do you have hands? Yeah, I believe that I have hands, yeah. If time is relative, does the universe have a true now? No, it doesn't. There's not a universal now. Can you mathematically disprove the existence of God? It depends on your notion of God, I guess. If your God requires that 2 + 2 = 5, then yeah, probably. Can we pass through the Van Allen belt? Yeah, absolutely you can. You just have to do it quickly. But you know that you have hands. Yeah, in the sense of no, where we don't require absolute certainty, yeah, I absolutely know I have hands. How do you prove the existence of a number? I don't know what you mean by existence. Double slit experiment. How do they know unobserved particles made a certain pattern without observing? They didn't not observe them. They just let them hit the screen. Hitting the screen is the observation. The point is if you interact with them during their flight path, then it'll change their behavior. If you don't interact with them, then it won't change their behavior, and you'll end up being able to see them on the screen where they are. I love back of the napkin Big Mac math. Yeah, me too. Do you plan on making more YouTube videos? I'm actually working on a long form version of YouTube, long form YouTube video, my first one. But it takes a lot of effort to actually do it right. I haven't even finished a script yet. Did we really land on the moon? Of course we did. What are your thoughts on magnetic acceleration science? Do you mean like particle physics? Because that's neat. Was there anything before the Big Bang? The mainstream view is that yes, there was inflation. What is your math publication in? I have like half a dozen math publications in various journals. They're on differential geometry. Is it possible the laws of physics differ throughout the universe, but we just have no way to find out? So, I mean, in principle, it's possible, but it'd be very weird if it were the case, because all of the things that happen in our local universe, like in our galaxy, we can see those same things happening everywhere else. And if the laws of physics were different, we would expect to see different things. If dark energy is expanding faster than the speed of light, how do we see distant galaxies? Dark energy isn't expanding. The universe, the distance between us and distant galaxies is growing faster than the speed of light. That's true. And so we can't see the light that those galaxies are currently emitting. From More Milk again, thank you. Why don't I remember landing on the moon if we did? Oh, probably because you were just a baby. How do you think we lost the technology to go back to the moon? Well, we didn't lose it. We just reused it, right? So the technology that they're talking about is like factories and like supply chains that were used to like get the materials, right? And after the Apollo program ended, they shut those factories down. The machines got reused in other places. They're not just going to leave them there doing nothing. That's valuable, like valuable tools, valuable machines and stuff like that. So yeah, they just got repurposed, reused, they got dismantled. So I had an idea that we could create unlimited energy by harvesting cow farts. What do you think? Well, it's not unlimited, but it's a good idea. They have stated themselves multiple times, word for word, that we lost the tech. Yeah, and if you ask them what they mean by that, what they mean is what I just said. How many volts do you need for electrolysis? I think it depends on the material that you're trying to electrolyze. Space isn't real. We live in a dome surrounded by water. Why do you think the sky blue? Okay. Okay. Are you 100% sure that you aren't just hands? I could be just hands. That's fair. If you had a business, what would it be? I don't know. Are you an atheist? I am an atheist. What is the probability that you have hands? I think it's pretty high. Yeah. Numbers are definitionally coherent, I guess. There is almost no progress in the last 80 years of physics. There's plenty of progress. You just haven't read enough. Did the universe have a definite beginning, or has it existed eternally in some form? So it could be that the universe had a first moment of time, but I don't think that there was ever nothing. Is infinity a number or just an idea? It's a concept. How much bigger Jupiter have to be second sun in solar system, and what would do to our solar system? I think it'd have to be like 10 or 50 times bigger or something like this. Never mind the Big Mac thing, I can't sport one. I'm sorry, Warm Milk. I'm sorry. Any chance we can't see galaxies beyond 13.8 billion years because space expands faster than light moves there? We can see galaxies that are currently like 46 billion light years away, or 40 billion light years away, or something like this. And that's because that's how far away they are now. They were much closer when they emitted their light. But yeah, the reason why we can't see it's not galaxies that we can't see. There's the cosmic microwave background radiation is 13.8 billion years ago, or it stems from 13.8 billion years ago. That's the aftermath of the Big Bang, right? No progress when we literally just started quantum computing. Right, right. Do you think exceptional field theory can compactify superstring to 4D? I'm not familiar with exceptional field theory, so I can't comment. How are white holes formed? We don't have any theoretical models to describe how white holes form, which is another reason why we have no good reason to think that white holes exist. Are you a materialist? I probably wouldn't use that word, but like I think that most of the things in the most of the stuff in the universe is like some form of quantum field, like some sort of matter, or force field or something like this. Is the visible spectrum infinite in frequencies with an interval or discrete? I mean, in principle, it's infinitely subdivisible, at least as far as we can tell. Maybe it's not the case, but practically speaking, you cannot infinitely subdivide it, because there's always such thing as a line width. Is light speed travel with our bodies surviving actually possible? Yeah, you just have to accelerate there slowly. Warm Milk with the 2 New Zealand dollars. Again, could you bleach a black hole? No, it would just get bigger. I see what you did there, though. We have a creator. That's the only way we exist. Okay, I mean, if that's what you want to believe, that's fine. When you say you're a physicist, what does that entail? Your profession, PhD, schooling? So I do have a PhD in physics. My current profession is I'm a science communicator and researcher, and I write physics papers. I spent most of this morning in meetings about physics papers. Well, one about a physics paper, and then one about a mathematics paper. But, I have another meeting soon about another paper. So yeah, it's like my occupation, if that makes sense. Is there any tests you would like to take if money wasn't a thing? Any tests I would like to take? No, not that I can think of. What is the cause of space expansion? That seems to be whatever the cause is. That's we call it dark energy. Are you affiliated with a university currently? Yes. What's the most boring part of being a physicist? Probably the writing the referee, or like doing revisions for a referee, probably. Are you a nerd with no girlfriend? Well, I don't have a girlfriend. I have a wife, though. I saw your hand, so you 100% have one hand. Are you sure? What do you think how that proton that allegedly went 1 second in the past? I don't think that there's a proton that went 1 second into the past. Do you think the expansion of the universe could be explained by being inside a black hole? No. In fact, I'm working on a paper, or I haven't actually started writing it yet, but I'm doing the background research. I think I have a way that I can prove that if general relativity is true, then we cannot be in a black hole. But I need to work out the details. Is there more to being a physicist than writing papers? Going to conferences, but teaching to some extent. From Gottfried with the 125 something. Do you think we can prove thank you, by the way. Do you think that we could prove the existence of Christ or any religion if you were 2,000 light years away and observing Earth? I mean, I guess in principle, yeah. But you would have to be like somehow looking in the tomb to see if Jesus actually rose from the dead, right? You might be a physicist, but I bet common sense is gone. Common sense is just like a less accurate version of physics, right? Common sense is intuitions. From MC with the $10, if you could devise a framework where scientific research could be crowdfunded, what would you like to see? How would you ensure funding went to good research and not pseudoscience and grifters? It's a good question. In some sense, I'm going to be trying it soon. I mean, so in one sense or another, I am crowdfunded, right? That's where most of my income comes from. The science communication that I do. So make of that what you will. But it doesn't cost much to run it for me to do research because I don't do experiments. I'm a theorist. But yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a good idea. There's trouble though, because I think that generally we are more likely to trust people who are smart to make good decisions for us than we are to make good decisions ourselves. So I'd be worried that if we cut all top-down government funding of research and we just relied solely on crowdfunding, I would think that like no research would get funded, right? Do you believe that we could create a star in the future? I guess it's in principle possible, but I don't see how it could happen. Where do you stand on the anthropic principle? It's good when it's relevant. It's not always relevant, though. Tic Tacs, UAPs, what are they? If we knew what they were, they wouldn't be UAPs. UAP stands for unidentified aerial phenomenon, right? If local realism is false, then what exactly is space-time? So local realism just means that either locality is false or realism is false. Neither of those are in conflict with the existence of space-time, though. Have you seen Angela Collier's channel and her video String Theory Lied to Us and Now Science Communication is Hard? Yes, I have. I think it's generally a good video. I have some contentions with it, but I think it's generally a good video. I think that she does really good stuff. What do you think about the Laughlin kid? He was a smart kid that got overhyped. What can you do with a physics undergraduate degree? Well, you can go be an engineer, you can go be a quant, you can go be a software developer. That's basically it. Thank you for the galaxy, Mr. Duke. I appreciate that. Anomalous? Oh, I thought it was aerial. Okay, unidentified anomalous phenomena, sure. I hear that dark energy is now increasing, so in about 20 billion years, we're going to have a big crunch. Should we take the Nobel Prize away from those guys who thought it would expand forever? No, you can't take away Nobel Prizes. Also, it's not... We can't prove that there's going to be a big crunch in 20 billion years. However, given certain assumptions about the way dark energy will continue to evolve, and given certain assumptions about the shape of the universe, then you can infer a crunch. But again, that's predicated on those assumptions. I just got a cash app, which is probably from Grimlock, to drink some water, as it always is. As always, from Grimlock, thank you for the $5 for preferred shade of green, also hydration. I'm like a forest green kind of guy. Is there a chance general relativity is wrong? Not wrong, but not complete, sure. How hard was your schooling? How long did it take? How much money? So I loved school the entire time I was in it because I'm a school nerd. It took 4 years for my undergraduate, 2 years for my master's, and 5 years for my PhD. I'm fortunate enough that my mother saved up money so that I could go to undergraduate. I didn't have to take out loans. I had some scholarships, of course. It didn't pay for all of it, but my mother had some money saved up for me. And then when I was doing my PhD and my master's, it was paid for by the university. That's pretty common if you're doing a STEM PhD. Do you think entanglement sends info faster than my wife calling me as soon as I sit down? No, it doesn't send info. What do you mean by relativity is incomplete? In the same way that Newtonian gravity was incomplete, that it told an accurate story in a certain regime of energies and masses and so on, but it didn't tell the full story across the entire spectrum of possible masses and possible speeds and things like this. Are you a Brian Cox fan? I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I understand that he does good science communication and he does real physics. So does gravity act result is some kind of decrease in entropy as it results in so many structure formations such as stars and galaxies, why life evolves as it is also highly structured? Yes, so in some sense, gravity does act entropically, but it's not clear. So what seems to be the case is that gravity causes a decrease in entropy. It's not clear that gravity is caused by entropy, though. Is the PhD scholarship predicated on being published or anything like that? No. So I got accepted to 2 universities. I basically, and they both offered me a stipend, which is, it's standard in STEM. And I basically said, look, I got this better offer from this other university, from this better university, but I want to go here. But in order to justify it, I need guaranteed funding, meaning that I need basically to be given a guaranteed TA position. Yeah, so by the way, it's not just like free money. You have to TA for them. But I said I need to be guaranteed a TA position, and I need to be guaranteed to have my tuition waived for at least this many years. And they said, yeah, sure, because they wanted me. Does going to a mid-tier state uni lower job outlook? It depends on what you're looking for job-wise. If you're looking for a academic job, unfortunately, probably. If you're looking for like a industry job, no, probably not at all. What's your favorite Powerwolf song? Well, that's tough. Right now, it might be 1589. But that's just because I saw it live, and the live show was amazing. Do you stream games as well, or just discussions? No, I don't stream games. Do quantum physics scientists understand how the quantum realm works, or do they not question it? I mean, they will have a pretty good intuition for how things work, yeah. How do you challenge the Born rule problem? The Born rule is a problem basically in all models. So I don't know if, I mean, some people will say that you can solve the Born rule problem by like decision theory. Like, this is like David Deutsch will make this claim with regards to the many worlds interpretation. I'm not sure if that's correct, but there are people who are thinking about it. I think that the Born rule problem is generally a problem for all of the models, though. Wait, entanglement does send information, it's just random. No, entanglement doesn't send information. I mean, information can't really be random by definition, right? Do you agree with Neil deGrasse Tyson that Newton was the most brilliant person to ever live? No, I think that Einstein might be up there. What classes did you TA for? I TA'd, and I was also when I was a more senior PhD student, I was an instructor rather than just a TA, but I was basically the 3 classes that I was a TA or instructor for were classical mechanics, electromagnetism, and essentially what's like waves and optics and stuff like that. And thermodynamics. Those two last subjects were kind of lumped together. Did you know Newton didn't come up with the gravitation law? It was Robert Hooke. That's interesting. What does TA stand for? Teacher's assistant. Basically, you run discussion sections. You might end up grading. You might hold office hours, things like this. Quantum realm, like Ant-Man, lol, I hate that someone said that. Yeah, I know. Why observer collapses the wave function? We don't even know if that happens. Yeah, apparently I am a decent negotiator. Well, when you have leverage, it's easy to negotiate, right? Right, like I got into, I won't tell you where the other place I got into was, but I got into UCLA. And UCLA is like one of the best schools in the country, especially for physics. It has an incredible department. But when I visited, I just didn't really like the vibe there. Like, I didn't really like the vibe of the department. I don't know. It was a very intangible thing, but compared to the other place where I did end up going, which I'm not going to tell you about, the place where I did end up going just had a lot better, like, it felt more welcoming. It felt like more collaborative and less competitive. And it seemed like the physics department there was still good. So I basically said, look, I got accepted to UCLA. They offered me this much money. Can you do better? I knew I was going to go there anyway, but I wanted to get more money or more like better guarantees rather. Thoughts on flat earthers? They are very silly. So many worlds is fully deterministic, right? Yes, yes it is. Do you think quantum computing will somehow broaden our understanding of quantum physics? To an extent, maybe, but probably not in the way that you think. Can you suggest a theoretical device to watch planet Earth future? What? I don't know what that means. What's the hardest physics course you've taken in college? Well, when I was a grad student, I took a course on topological quantum field theory, and that was really hard. What really is the collapse of the wave function? Is that a real thing or just a useful explanation tool? That is an interpretation of what our observations indicate. It's not true that we've observed that this happens. Can you elaborate a bit on quantum time? Is it basically just a quantum simulation theory? I don't know what you mean by quantum time. If I want to get into MIT and major in physics, you have... Oh, I want to get into MIT and major in physics. Do you have any advice on how I can improve my chances? It's really competitive. You need a really good score on your physics GRE, probably. You need good grades. You need research. At this point, like undergrads have like first name published research papers in good journals, and that's like those are the people you're competing against. So, yeah. Oh no, this is for undergrad. I'm sorry. For undergrad, I have no idea. I don't know how any of that works. What do you think Tic Tacs could be? Well, Tic Tacs are a small flavored mint that come in packs of like 50. They're made mostly of sugar. Is it worth getting a master's if I plan on getting a PhD? Most programs, at least in the US, most programs will be straight to PhD from undergrad, and you'll get like handed a master's along the way. Wait, can you elaborate on flat Earth? My brother's a flat earther and nothing is getting to him. You have one good proof or experiment. Look, so the way that you get someone out of like a you know, a brain rot like that is you have to think about the way that they got into it, and you kind of have to undermine that. If your brother was interested in experiments or proof or like experiments or evidence or anything like that, he wouldn't be a flat earther in the first place. What do you think about Tommy DeVito getting cut from the New York Giants? I have no feelings about that. Any thoughts on England's research that thermodynamics explains the origin of life better than self-replication? I think that those two things go hand in hand, don't they? What gas is burning on the sun? So the sun isn't burning. The sun is a nuclear reactor. It is fusing protons, fusing hydrogen atoms into helium. I meant the Tic Tac recorded by Nimitz. No one has any idea what that is. That's why it's unidentified, right? Do you believe that there were white holes in the universe? No. If there were, we would see them, and there's no known way that they could form. I've subscribed to your channel. Do you think if God revealed himself to the masses, they would not take him for granted, take advantage, expect him to do everything for him, and blame him for everything? Well, maybe they would, but then they just wouldn't go to heaven, right? If they were still bad. If the double slit experiment works differently when observed, what forces the observation? There has never been a double slit experiment where someone's observation is the determining factor. Anytime the double slit experiment has been done, it's been done using some sort of instrument to determine which path information the electron or the photon travels down. What do you think black holes do? Things fall into them, and then for a very long time, nothing comes out. Blitz, is money or motivation towards physics? No. If I wanted money, if money was my main motivation, I would have never gotten into physics. Physics does not pay well. Could the escape speed of a planet be faster than the speed of light, and would it seem invisible to us looking at the planet? What you're talking about is a black hole. So if the Born rule is a challenge for all interpretations, how can many worlds, which has every outcome occur, justify why observers should see frequencies proportional to psi squared? So the idea is that in the many worlds interpretation, the Born rule gives you how much uncertainty you should have in your own self-location, right? That's what the Born rule is about in the many worlds interpretation. It's self-locating uncertainty, if you will, is what the Born rule characterizes. So, Dr. Blitz, why is Ian dodging you on debates? Because Ian's a chump. No, I'm kidding. Won't tech get good on a large scale relative to the universe considering the last 500 years? I don't know what you mean by on a large scale, but I don't know if, there's still fundamental laws of physics that we can't violate, right? What do you think about the paper proving we're not in a simulation? I think it's pretty compelling. Negative mass propulsion can theoretically go faster than the speed of light. That's true. From Stober with the $5. Thank you. What's your intuition on quantum biology? Is it pseudoscience? Do you think any quantum effects on neurons are washed out by noise? I lean towards that probably there's no quantum effects, no significant quantum effects happening in the brain. But quantum biology is a real thing. Like, as far as I know, quantum mechanics is required. Like, we understand that quantum mechanics is involved in photosynthesis, like some sort of quantum tunneling or something like this. So quantum biology isn't nonsense. It's just, it's not clear if it like is relevant for the human brain. Can we create a quantum levitating machine that can quantum lock yet have propulsion? So quantum locking is what is a thing that happens when you have impurities in a superconductor above like a magnetic rail. That's what quantum locking is. And so yeah, like, I mean, in principle, you could attach rockets to the back of a superconductor and have it go around a track. It would just not be very interesting. Helium is burning on the sun. I don't know if our sun is hot or old enough to fuse helium yet. How would you explain wave functions to middle school class? I don't know if I would. Are we going to deal with time dilation in the future? Maybe. Depends on what the future's like, right? Do you think loop diagrams have an effect on polarization entanglement? I haven't thought about that at all. So you're talking about, like, say you have two photons. Well, okay, I mean, in some sense, yes, they have to, insofar as a photon is what is the sum of all possible Feynman diagrams, right? Like, that's what it is. So in some sense, yes, but if you're asking if the loop diagrams weren't there, would the entanglement be different? I don't think so, but I'd have to think about it some more. Why is black hole black? Is it made of carbon? No, it's black because light can't come out. Light can go in, it falls in, but nothing can escape, so it is black. It doesn't send any light back out our way. How different are outcomes of soccer games in high amp branches due to many worlds? What? How do we know that the redshift we see isn't simply time relativity? Maybe there's no shift at all? It would be weird if it was isotropic away from us. If something is faster than light, would it be observable to human instruments? In principle, yeah, sure. Will a magnetic block sliding on a metallic frictionless plane experience any sort of force resisting its motion? Well, if it's frictionless, then you've said that there's no force, so no, but you can't have frictionless things, so. What accepted physics concept are you most skeptical of? A cosmological constant. If I'm not answering your question and you've spammed it for a long time, there's a reason I'm not answering it, and it's probably because it's not related to the topic, so please don't spam. Are quantum computers on the intranet? I don't think so. Is there a good Dragon Force song? I mean, like, Through the Fire and Flames is like the classic Dragon Force song, right? What are they finding and looking for at the collider? Well, currently, I don't know if they're looking for anything new, but they're currently trying to refine old measurements or older measurements. Are you excited about the end of October when we have this flyby of a new asteroid that's not of our planetary system? It's not particularly exciting to me, no. If semi-classical solutions permit closed time-like curves, how should we understand entropy and the second law of thermodynamics along such curves? You should understand them as saying that entropy increases in the direction in which time flows. And that just means that time doesn't necessarily flow in the same direction as the time coordinate does. Or you can say that, in order to have a second law of thermodynamics, you need to not have closed time-like curves. What's your favorite number between 1 and 10? 3. Maybe? I don't know. 3 is a pretty good number. If you had a massively long rope and slowly pushed towards a black hole from a safe distance, could you pull it back at any point, or does there come a point some of it breaks off or something? Yes, eventually it'll snap. What's your IQ? I don't know. Got any tips for self-learning physics? Pick up university textbooks and start working through them. If something was traveling faster than light, then how could we possibly observe it? Wouldn't the relative experience of time mean we inherently couldn't observe it? If it was traveling faster than light, it would still be in different places at different times, and there's no reason to say that it wouldn't be giving off light. In fact, arguably, it would have to give off light due to the Cherenkov effect or Cherenkov radiation. So yeah, we would kind of expect to see it. Like it wouldn't cease to exist. It could still give off light, and we could still see the light that it gives off, right? Has gravity always existed? At least as long as the universe has existed, which may be forever. Stinky Ethian with the $3 says, should have picked a bigger number. Bummer. Good point. I should have. Explain the theory of graviton. Do you think it exists? Right, gravitons are hypothetical ways that we can quantize gravity. The idea is that gravitons would characterize the smallest chunk of a gravitational wave, in the same way that photons characterize the smallest chunk of an electromagnetic wave. Now the question is does it exist? It probably does in some sense, but probably not in the way that, I suspect not in the way that like the photon exists. Dr. Blitz, what are your thoughts on the 276 IQ guy? His IQ is almost certainly not 276. Do you study the cosmological concepts? Yeah. Rank the science communicators starting with you. I don't know. I think I'm decent. I think I'm decent at this. There's a lot of science communicators. What are the odds we are in a multiverse, and why is it 100%? It's not 100%. Jeffrey Ann with the $2. What's your stance on universes, 10 or 26? I don't think either. I don't think that there are 10 or 26 universes. Can physicists eat 2 cheeseburgers at once? I guess if you have a big enough mouth. Do you believe the spinning ball? Well, yeah. I'm as confident in the ball being in the globe being a ball as I am in my hands existing, right? Is it possible to slow down photons, maybe sending them through dense substances? No. Photons, kind of by definition, these are things that move at the speed of light. Now, you can slow down electromagnetic waves by coupling them with other things. But then they're just not photons anymore. They're like polaritons. Thank you for the galaxy, La Papa Voladora. I appreciate that. Explain the galactic rotation problem. Which one are you referring to? Galaxy rotation curves? If you're referring to galaxy rotation curves, the idea is that the way we can tell how heavy something is, often, or the way that we traditionally tell how heavy something is by figuring out how quickly things are orbiting it. So like if you wanted to figure out how heavy Jupiter is, you could just look at how quickly the moons go around Jupiter, and then use Newton's laws. The trouble is if you do this for galaxies, it seems like the stuff at the outer edges of galaxies is moving far faster than, or the stuff moving at the outer edges of the galaxy says that the galaxy has a certain mass. But if we then like count up the number of stars in the galaxy, if we add up all of the dust in the galaxy, there's just not enough stuff to account for the mass that it should have. So we have a problem. This is the galaxy rotation curve problem. And we say, well, maybe there's dark matter. Oh. How do you think the universe will end personally? I don't think it will like properly end. Can you slow the speed of light? You can slow the travel of electromagnetic waves through a medium, but and in some sense you could call that light. But other than that, not really. From Owen Pervs with the $10, thank you. It's a shame to see so many ignorant and angry people lashing out at this man trying to spread understanding. Please do not let these people discourage you. Oh, I don't let them discourage me, don't worry. But I appreciate the thought. Have you ever done an IQ test? I have not. I don't know why everybody's so interested in that though. Is it possible to find a new element in the universe? Probably not. It is possible that we can make new elements, but as far as we can tell, there's only 92 naturally occurring elements, or we might call them long-lived naturally occurring elements. What are your thoughts on empty space being a superfluid rather than an empty vacuum? I have no thoughts on that. Isn't that from the Big Bang Theory? Isn't there a woman Harvard physicist that claims to have slowed down photons? Probably, but she's probably overhyping her work because they're not photons when they're traveling through a medium. They're polaritons or quasi-particles. Why do we have 3 generations of particles? Electrons, muons, and taus all behave the same way, just heavier. Same with quarks. Why 3 copies? That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to it. What is dark matter and dark energy? Roughly 95% of the universe is invisible stuff, and we only know exists because of its effects. We have no idea what it actually is. Yeah. So dark matter is likely some kind of stuff that has mass and it moves around, right? It's like a stuff, probably. That's really well accounted for with the data that we have. Dark energy is whatever is causing the expansion of the universe. Now, the way that we understand gravity, this is that, well, the only way to cause a thing like that would require something with energy, so we call it dark energy. From Heathrow, well, with the $10, so LIGO is detecting gravitational waves. Since it is, doesn't that imply the existence of a gravitational field that is waving? Or is it just spacetime that's waving? The gravitational field is spacetime. Did you start TikTok as Dr. Blitz, or were you Mr. Blitz at one point? It's a funny story. So I started making content on TikTok after I'd submitted my dissertation, but about 3 weeks before I actually received my diploma. So technically, I had the name Dr. Blitz, even though I was still Mr. Blitz for a time. From Stinky Ethian with the $6.66. Hail, Satan. I take it, even if Newtonian Doppler shift can explain expansion, it can't make it as accurate. It can't make as accurate cosmological predictions as GRE. Right, that's true. The point is that the point is cosmological expansion is a choice of coordinates, basically. So you could just as easily work in another set of coordinates where, you know, I guess a static slice, right? In principle, I guess. Well, it can't be static, but yeah, what's the claim? Yeah, I'd have to think about it some more. I put it on my to-do list of things to read about because in principle, it is just a coordinate choice, right? But the question is there anything invariant about it that we can account for with GR? What's the highest rank tensor you've worked with? 7th rank? Maybe 6th. Yeah, maybe 6th. Thoughts on Paul Dirac? Brilliant guy. Do you believe zero-point energy exists? Zero-point energy is a prediction of quantum field theory. So like if quantum field theory is correct, then zero-point energy is a real thing. It just doesn't mean that it's usable. So can a chunk of dark matter technically hit Earth? If dark matter really exists, and it's what we think it is, like some sort of particle that doesn't interact much, there is dark matter inside of you. But it wouldn't form chunks. How old are you and how long does it take to learn physics in order to find unified field theory? Well, nobody has ever found a unified field theory, so probably you'd have to be infinity old, at least at this point, but I'm 32. Are electromagnetic waves just mathematical representations? Well, no. I mean, in some sense, mathematical or electromagnetic waves are the only things we can detect, like that we can actually see. So I would say no, they're real things. Are you going to play the sailing update to RuneScape when it comes out? Probably not. Did we go to the moon? Of course we did. Do you think you're good in math? Generally, yeah, I'm fairly good, more than the average population. What are toroidal fields or waves? So I've never heard of a toroidal wave. They're probably not real. Toroidal fields are the kind of fields that you get inside of magnetic toruses, magnetic toroids. So basically they're the fields that go like this. Now, when quantum woo people, flat earthers and stuff, are talking about toroidal fields, they're talking about poloidal fields, which are fields that go like this, kind of like an apple shape. And that's just a type of magnetic field. How do we figure out that the universe is expanding? Was it measuring the movement of 2 other galaxies compared to each other? It was measuring the motion of galaxies relative to us. Yes, poloidal fields. Those are the fields that actually look like an apple, the field lines. Any massless excitation of a field? Yeah, that's true. No, poloidal waves, like, these are not a thing. What is the physics mainstream theory you're most skeptical of? Maybe the existence of a cosmological constant? Okay, my dudes, there's physicists and then there are astrophysicists. Yes, astrophysicists are not physicists and vice versa, although there's a lot of overlap. I am a physicist, not an astrophysicist. Which technologies are being used in physics digital simulations? I don't know. I've never done those. Galaxy where time moves different or something. What? Shapiro time delay is no a local effect. Oh, okay. This is not a question. So the observable local speed of light remains the same. Yep, that's always true. How would you detect a tachyon if you had to? It depends on how it interacts with things. That's how we build detectors. It depends on how they interact. And you haven't given me enough information to know how this hypothetical tachyon interacts. If I wanted to time travel, would I have to choose exact time and space coordinates to not die? In a science fiction realm, yeah, I guess. It was actually measuring how far and how fast the Andromeda Nebula was moving away from us. No, actually it wasn't. It wasn't Andromeda. It was more distant galaxies, more distant nebula. Andromeda is actually moving towards us. So no, it wasn't Andromeda. Are virtual particles still theory? Virtual particles are mathematical tools. They're not objects. They're not real things. Oh, I have a headache. Might need coffee. Could we just miscalculate how big the black hole at the center of the galaxy is rather than dark matter? No, at this point we've actually imaged it. So, no. What was the chance of Earth being habitable? Well, it is, so 100%. What's your favorite equation? My favorite physics equation is the Einstein field equations. It's that the Einstein tensor is equal to 8 pi times the stress energy tensor. Would anything change if we discovered a right-handed neutrino? Yeah, probably a lot. Depends on its properties, of course. Please tell me, how does water stay in place on our round planet? Gravity. But it's not. It is always moving. It just, you know, there's a force pulling it down, and that force is gravity. Does the moon lose kinetic energy from pulling on the ocean through tides? Yes, in a sense. Yeah, it does. Well, and so does the Earth, for that matter. Well, okay, no. Does the moon lose energy? No, I mean, the moon isn't going to lose energy by doing the pulling. Now, the moon is also being pulled. So the moon can lose energy through being pulled, or rather its energy can change, as long as there's some sort of dynamic system. It can be converted to friction or whatever. How much glue can a gluon glue if a gluon could glue on? 10? If Einstein was never born, do you think someone else would have come up with relativity? Yeah, David Hilbert came up with relativity like the day, or general relativity anyway, like the day after. Why is microwave pizza hotter than the sun? Science. You might mean, what's the chances of any planet having life? So she might be asking about the Drake equation. Yeah, so we don't know what the probability of the Earth having life is. However, we do know that Earth-like planets are not going to be so rare. So the question is do all Earth-like planets have a chance of having life? Maybe. With physics changing, what is or do you have a stance on C matter theory? I've never heard of C matter theory. Oh, do you mean condensed matter theory? Condensed matter theory I think is interesting, but it's just not my cup of tea. Do you think it's possible we can't see the white holes because they lead to a different universe? White holes would, if they existed, would be very, very, very bright. So we would be able to see them if they existed, which is why we have a good reason to think that they don't exist. Why do you not agree with the cosmological constant? What went into such a calculation? Well, I mean, there's new data that says that that the cosmological constant seems to be changing, which means it's not constant, which means it's not a cosmological constant. It's not a constant dark energy density. But more than that, I think that, I mean, there could be a cosmological constant. I just don't think that that's what's driving the expansion of the universe. I should be clear. If we are inside a black hole, what would happen if our black hole merged with another one? Well, we're probably not inside a black hole. And we would probably never notice if our black hole merged with another if we were. How is time relative? Can you explain relativity in a simple way? In a simple way. What's the simplest way to do this? So, yeah, so one way to think about this is kind of a standard analogy. It's not perfectly precise, but it's close. So everything moves through space-time at the same rate. Now, the faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. So if you and a friend are traveling through space at different rates, you will experience different amounts of time. That's what special relativity tells us, roughly. Did you remember when they want to bomb the moon for science? What will happen if they actually do that? I don't know. I've never heard of that. There are many types of black holes. Yeah, there are. How come we can't see electrons? Well, we don't have electron receptors in our head, but we can feel them. That's what getting electrocuted is, roughly. Is JWST redefining how we think of the origin of the universe? No. If you create a wormhole to a distant point in space, are you also creating a hole to a point in time? Depends on the kind of wormhole, but yeah, I guess in principle. Where did this idea of we're inside a black hole come from? I've only recently started hearing it. It sounds ridiculous. Yeah, so there was a guy named Lior Shamir, who's a data scientist, computer scientist, who in April published a paper that was saying, yeah, these galaxies aren't all rotating in random directions. There seems to be a bias in the direction the galaxies are rotating. And in the discussion section of this, 18-page paper or whatever, he has like one paragraph on, well, one possible explanation is that we're inside a black hole. The trouble is that he doesn't really do that. So like he doesn't actually, like the citations that he gives are not really relevant citations, but people kind of locked in on that. And they're like, oh, scientists think that we're in a black hole. No, they don't. If we travel to the next closest star system, how much time would pass on Earth before we return? It depends on how fast you're going, but at minimum a few years. From Stowbird with the $5, please explain topology in the universe briefly. Only holes matter in topology. Make it make sense and assume that I'm dumb. So, right, so there's kind of two pieces that are relevant here. So that you can have punctures. Right, so there's kind of two pieces to topology here. You can have punctures, which are in some sense like local topology. This is kind of what like black holes would be like. They're just like a tiny little hole in space-time that you can't, you can draw a circle around it, but you can't contract that circle forever. You can't contract it to a point because there's a puncture in the space-time. Then there's global topology, namely like the difference between the surface of a sphere and the surface of a sheet of paper. Those have different global topology. The surface of a sheet of paper is open. The surface of a sphere is closed. And so you have different topological characteristics at the global scale. So there's kind of two different pieces there. But they both talk about stuff that it doesn't matter how you squeeze and stretch it, that feature will remain the same. Why do loop divergences and diffeomorphism invariance hinder our ability to understand quantum gravity? It's a renormalization issue. And I don't actually think it's directly, and maybe there's a way to see that it's directly due to diffeomorphism invariance, but I think more that it's because diffeomorphism invariance fixes the kind of Lagrangians that you can have, and the Lagrangian that we have for general relativity for a lot of these, modern theories of gravity are non-renormalizable, meaning that we can't cancel the loop divergences away for observables. Without an infinite number of counterterms. Rose defo studied the G.R. Friedman equations. Yes, I have. I recently wrote a paper using them. Lagrangian, not Lagrange James. Lagrangian density, yeah. Does relativity mean time travel is possible? To the future, absolutely. To the past, probably not. Hawking once pointed out that we couldn't theoretically punch through space using a sheet of paper. Hawking never did that. That was never a Hawking thing. That's a science fiction meme. Can Andromeda come towards us when expansion is how can Andromeda come towards us when expansion is in all directions? Simple. The gravitational pull between Andromeda and the Milky Way is stronger than the expansion force, basically. It's basically that. Do you believe that string theory is a viable explanation to the universe? Not for our universe, but perhaps for other universes. What if it's less of a punch and more of a weave? It's still not a thing. Has the discovery of larger than expected galaxies in the early universe changed your view of the Big Bang Theory? No, it's changed my view of early galaxy formation. How can I get into astrophysics, especially when related to planetary science? Go to school for it, presumably. By the way, and I should have said this a while ago. Well, no, it's not worth saying now. Do you believe we are in a simulation? I do not. Basically because the only reason you might think we're in a simulation is if you think that we can simulate a universe like our own, but we can't simulate a universe like our own, and you can prove that. So, and this isn't just a tech issue, this is like a fundamental physics issue. From Fear's interaction with the $5, do you think an orbital array of solar panels beaming energy to the surface is cost effective and sustainable at this time? What are the obstacles? Definitely not cost effective, because launching stuff into orbit is very expensive. Thoughts on 3i Atlas? Probably just a natural thing. Can you completely unite magnetic and electric fields with relativity? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you create a wormhole to a point in space 7 billion years ago, do you travel 7 billion years into the past or you remain in the present? Well, yeah, you would travel 7 billion years in the past, but in order to create it there, you would have had to have been there 7 billion years ago, right? I believe you are in a simulation because we were all watching you. Ah, there you go. That makes sense. Are fields infinite and eternal? Well, they are. If the universe is infinite, then they are infinite. If the universe is eternal, then they are eternal. How do you explain people in the southern hemisphere not seeing meteors come up from the sky instead? I've seen meteors come up from the sky. I've seen videos of this. People all over the world see meteors come up from the horizon. It's just rarer than coming down because most of the sky is above you rather than near the horizon. Are round earthers considered low IQ? No, flat earthers are, generally. And I think that that's like statistically true too. I'd actually be interested. Okay, so there's been no study that has directly measured the IQ of flat earthers. Apparently, though, there is a link between belief in a flat earth and low scientific literacy. That's interesting. As well as a strong Dunning-Kruger effect. Interesting. Yeah, so Dunning-Kruger effect and flat earthers, an exploratory analysis. Published, when was this published? 2023, cool. What is your theory about the Great Attractor? It's probably just a bunch of galaxies we can't see because our galaxy is in the way. Why does space-time collapse into a black hole after a star dies? How does this work? It's not that space-time collapses, it's that the matter collapses to form a black hole. And that's just because the gravity is too strong. To help understand a universe with no beginning, it's helpful to think of all moments of existing at once. Don't think of them as existing at once because that implies time. Think of them existing equally. Think of them as being equally real. Is it still commonly agreed upon that our universe isn't infinite, specifically among physicists? So our observable universe is definitely finite. The universe as a whole, there's not really a consensus, but generally our models rely on the universe, or at least our models kind of imply that the universe is infinite. Have you ever seen the Jubilee debate video with flat earthers? No, but that sounds really funny. If enormous black holes could theoretically lead to big bangs, could there be little bangs with small universes? Well, we don't have a good reason to think that enormous black holes could theoretically lead to big bangs. But if they could, then sure, why not? Can you observe a single photon from the side? No. In order to see something, it has to enter your eyeball. If the universe is expanding, into what is it expanding? So the universe is not expanding in the sense that the edges are getting further away from each other. There aren't edges. At least if we take standard cosmology seriously, there aren't edges. What's happening, if you take the expansion view, like the expansion point of view kind of perspective, what's happening is that given a particular region of space, perhaps it has like ping pong balls filling that space will get bigger over time. Like the ping pong balls will grow further away from each other. Can Fred always remain as the final boss of Flat Earth? Fred is a character. He's a lolcow himself. Do you have a background in philosophy to analyze arguments regarding God or origin of universe? I have a background in mathematics, and a lot of the analytic philosophy is just mathematics with fancy words labeled on top. So to answer your question roughly, no, I don't have a background in philosophy. I have an interest in philosophy, but not a formal background, no. Do the dimensions of the universe get smaller as you go up? What? I don't know what you mean by that. Why isn't there a non-perturbative and background-independent formulation for quantum gravity? Well, people are working on it. It's just hard. Could we improve parallax distance measures to galaxies by using the sun's oscillation above and below the Milky Way's plane as a large parallax baseline? I guess you could, but that would take a really, really long time. Do you think we're alone? I suspect not, but I doubt that they've ever been here. Will you ever join a Flat Earth Live? I tend not to because it's a waste of time. And I don't have a whole lot of time to go onto other people's lives all that often. And usually I just get talked over and I'm never actually able to make a point, and then I end up getting kicked because they don't actually want to have a discussion, they just want to circle jerk. So such is the way of things, which is why I invite Flat Earthers onto my live stream all the time and to have 1v1 normal adult conversations. Prove we aren't in a black hole, I'm working on a paper on it. If we trust GR, I think that we can actually prove mathematically that we can't be in a black hole. Thank you for the $1, Godwin. And from John Kirk with the $10, thank you. I suppose what I meant was that if you create a wormhole to a point in space 7 billion light years away, do you inherently travel 7 billion years in the past, or does your original answer still play? No, so you would not travel 7 billion years into the past, no. What's GR? GR stands for general relativity. From Heathrow with the $5, what do you think we as humanity could achieve if it were possible for us to reverse engineer the source code of the universe itself? I don't know what that question means. I don't think that there is source code for the universe. I don't think our universe is a simulation. I think that there are laws of physics. Those laws of physics are the things that constrain what we can do. That's the story. What is the reason for the explosion of flat Earth believers? Probably sites like TikTok, to be honest. When unapologetics is pumped up, should we expect a debunk of Charlie Kirk? We don't know if we're ever going to do videos. For now, we're just doing the call-in show. Do you think there is much opportunity for physics research in Antarctica? You're among the few who could possibly explore and work there. I mean, yeah, people do. There are physics experiments that happen in Antarctica. Like, that's a real thing. There's an experiment that is active there called Ice Cube, which is a lovely name. If you're a physicist, explain superposition in a way that makes sense. Superposition is a thing that happens to all kinds of waves. And so the easiest way to think of it is to think of sound waves. So imagine that you play a chord on a guitar. There's a whole bunch of different waves that are overlapping each other, and they produce a single sound wave that's made up of a whole bunch of different waves overlapping. That's superposition. All right, y'all. I think I'm starting to lose my voice, and I have a meeting in like an hour, so I need to make sure that I don't lose my voice for that meeting. So I'm going to end the live here, and thank everybody for being here. Thank you for asking questions. If you guys want to ask more questions like this, feel free to join my Discord server. There's a link in the description of the YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube to the Discord server. You can click and join there. You can also join through the link tree in my bio on TikTok. If you just click the link tree in the bio on TikTok to Discord, it will not work. You have to copy and paste the link into a browser or into something like that, and then it'll work. Anyway, thank you guys for being here, and I will see you tomorrow for some more debates. Take care, everybody.